Welcome, everybody. I'm really glad that you're here. Take a moment to settle in wherever you're listening from. The session's about helping you see the terrain that you're already navigating with a little more clarity, not to judge it or change it. In this space, we're not looking for right answers or the fastest solutions. We're building awareness because awareness is what makes choices possible. In this session, we'll begin exploring side hustles and what the cost of beginning build one without considering sovereignty. I will offer structure and perspective along the way, and you get to decide what resonates, what does not, and what you want to carry forward. There's nothing you need to do to prepare for this, but let us begin. I'm Tara Palazzolo, the founder of TruePath CO and the creator of the TruePath framework. After 16 years in pharmaceutical and more than a decade in information security, I saw firsthand how perfectionism, hyperindependence, and burnout dismantle identity. Corporate, social, and generational conditioning often teach us to self-abandon in order to belong, perform, or survive. Through my own rebuilding, I discovered something essential. We do not change through force. We change when we understand how our system actually works. My work blends emotional clarity, intuitive intelligence, and grounded structure. My goal is not to fix anyone because nobody is broken. Instead, the TruePath framework reveals the hidden patterns that drive exhaustion, self-doubt, over-responsibility, and misalignment. Once something is made visible, it can be redesigned. Once redesigned, it can be lived. I help people recognize patterns, rebuild their inner architecture, and lead from truth. While this framework is designed from my perspective as a woman, individuals of all identities are welcome here. My mission is simple: to guide yourself back to yourself with clarity, integrity, and sovereignty, because these concepts are universal and have no boundaries. Before we begin, I want to invite you to do a brief landscape check. It's not about having the right answer, it's simply about noticing. There's no need to overthink this, just answer from your first gut reaction. Let me ask, if you imagine starting or growing a side hustle or even a business right now, what feels most overwhelming before beginning? I'll give you a moment, or feel free to pause the video or podcast here, and when you're ready, hit continue. Thank you for taking a moment to check in with your current terrain. These are some of the themes that tend to surface when people pause with this question. Concern about money, especially the fear of investing or starting without a safety net. Questions about expertise or legitimacy. Am I even ready enough? Am I good enough to teach this, or build this, or create this? Fear of making the wrong decision and having to undo it later. Overwhelm around time, energy, or capacity to sustain something long term. Decision fatigue, feeling scattered or even unsure where to begin. There's also the pressure to get it right the first time. These are not problems, they're signals. And these signals tell us where energy is already being spent. What you noticed may or may not be reflected, and that's okay. It's not an exhausted list. It's simply a snapshot of themes that tended to arise when this question was asked. You may recognize pieces of yourself in some of these, in none of them, or in a different way entirely. What matters is not whether your experience matches, but what you noticed and how it felt when you noticed it. We're using this as context, a single moment in time, and it's not a conclusion or a label. What a sovereign side hustle is. I want to pause here for a moment because how we define this matters. Most of us were taught to think that a side hustle or even a business is something that we add more effort, more output, more responsibility. And this is in exchange for something that we don't have. It could be money, freedom, or even creativity. But often the context is that we pile it on top of everything else that we're already carrying. But in practice, a sovereign side hustle behaves very differently. It functions less like an obligation and more like a relationship. Specifically, it's a relationship between capacity, boundaries, and decision authority. This distinction matters because when we misunderstand the structure, we often assume that the problem is motivation, discipline, or clarity. What it actually is missing is containment, the structure that makes sustainability possible. This is a lens that we'll use for the rest of this discussion. What a sovereign side hustle is not. I want to name something important here because it's often where people turn on themselves. Many of the behaviors we associate with being committed, strategic, or serious about a side hustle are actually not signs of sovereignty. They're signs of protection. Things like endlessly reworking your brand or structure, trying to get it just right before you move forward, or even staying stuck in analysis, convincing yourself that once you have enough certainty, information, or context, you'll finally begin. Hustling from financial panic, over offering in order to feel legitimate, launching before you have any real containment. Lastly, calling exhaustion commitment. These behaviors are understandable. They make sense in context, but they're not required. Sovereignty does not ask you to abandon yourself in order to move forward. Our nervous system is incredibly fast at protecting us. It's built for survival, not for alignment, fulfillment, or long-term sustainability. So when something new begins to challenge an old sense of safety, the system often steps in before we're even aware of it. This is where any shift towards sovereignty usually gets interrupted. And this is important because this is also the moment when most people assume that they're doing something wrong. They start their business, they start setting hours, they stop over offering, and they make a decision that actually fits their capacity. And then suddenly something feels off. It's not because the decision is wrong, it's because it's unfamiliar. Your nervous system has learned very specific markers of safety over time: speed, urgency, external validation, even visible proof that something is working. So when a sovereign side hustle moves more deliberately, more contained, and more quietly at first, it can really feel threatening, even when it's healthier. Protection steps in here. It's not trying to sabotage you, not because you lack discipline or clarity, but because your system's trying to keep you inside what worked before. This is often when people abandon their boundaries, rush launches, overcorrect, undercharge. They also start questioning decisions they knew were right. Alignment is quiet at first. Protection is loud. When you begin building something sustainable, you move from improvising to structure. And the structure removes the false sense of safety that came from being able to change anything at any moment. Your system can read that as danger, even when nothing's actually wrong. Early side hustle momentum often comes from things like bursts of inspiration, late night creativity, flexible effort, or I'll just do this when I feel like it energy. That can feel freeing, alive, and energizing, especially for those that have worked in a stuffy corporate culture. But sustainability introduces things like defined work hours, pricing, boundaries around availability, repeatable offers, and systems instead of improvising. This shift can feel like a loss, even though it's actually support. So when a structure replaces spontaneity, many people feel is, wow, this used to be really exciting. This feels more serious. Or I just can't follow the spark anymore. The structure's not wrong, it's just simply unfamiliar. And learning to tell the difference between protection reaction and alignment stabilizing is part of building something that can actually last. When we ignore this moment, it comes at a cost, and that's what we're going to talk about next. The cost of ignoring business sovereignty. None of this happens because you did something wrong. I want to say that clearly before we go any further. It happens because most business models were never designed to protect the human inside them. They're designed for output, for scalability, for growth metrics that look good on paper. So when you build inside these models without sovereignty, the cost shows up quietly at first. Then it shows up loudly. You tell yourself you'll just work a little longer, answer one more message, refine the offer again. The scope keeps expanding, but nothing ever feels complete. Your days get full, but somehow you're always behind. It shows up in money too, not always as failure, but as instability. Income comes in waves. You can't quite predict it. And instead of adjusting the structure, you adjust yourself. You give more, you deliver more, you stretch further than what's actually sustainable. Maybe you even add nights or weekends. Over time, you may notice that you're constantly reworking things. Offers change, directions shift, decisions take longer than what they should. Not because you lack clarity, but because your nervous system does not feel safe enough to settle on a decision. Then eventually something more subtle happens. You begin to lose trust in your own instincts. You start second guessing what you once knew. You look outside yourself for reassurance. You wait for proof that you're allowed to choose what actually works for you. And sometimes the business does grow. From the outside, it looks successful, but inside you feel tired, bored, and strangely trapped in the thing that you built to create freedom. This is the cost nobody talks about. A business built without sovereignty will eventually demand more than it gives. Sovereignty is not about doing less, it's about building in a way that does not require you, the owner, to disappear. Once you see that, you actually can't unsee it. So if the cost of building a business without sovereignty looks like this, the next question becomes, what does it look like to build with sovereignty? Seeing the landscape differently. Have you ever noticed that once you see something clearly, you can't go back to seeing it the same way again? It's like an optical illusion. At first, what you feel feels fixed, obvious, unquestionable. And then something, wow, a different perspective, and you realize there was another way to see it all along. That's what this context is talking about. A sovereign side hustle is not just a different strategy for starting a business. It's a different orientation to building a business. Many traditional models normalize constant availability, urgency, and unreasonable pressure. They quietly teach you to bend yourself to meet demand, to stretch, to compress, to override your own capacity in the name of progress. A sovereign side hustle reverses that orientation. Instead of asking, how do I make this work better no matter the cost? The question becomes, what can I build that my system can actually sustain? This matters deeply if your long-term goal is autonomy, because without this shift, it's easy to recreate the same volatility you're trying to leave, especially if you're looking to exit out of corporate, because only now you're the one that's going to be enforcing it. It's not about whether a side hustle should be built, it's about how it should be built. Some ways of building require self-abandonment from the start, and when you begin from that place, you set a precedent. Over time, that precedent becomes the structure and the operating norm. A sovereign side hustle starts with capacity and boundaries and clarity about who this is for and who it's not. This is not a softer approach, it's a more precise focus. Very often, it's the difference between building something that drains you and building something that can actually support your life, your goal, and your vision. What a sustainable side hustle is. When I say sovereign or sustainable side hustle, I want to be very clear about what I mean and what I don't. This is not about never working hard. It's about not building something that requires you to override yourself indefinitely. Movement without self-betrayal means you're still making progress, but you're not doing it by ignoring your body, your limits, or your values. For example, you might work an intense week to finish something important. This could be a conscious choice. What changes is that you don't tell yourself, this is how I'm operating from now on, and it has to be forever. The moment effort becomes unconscious, this is where self-betrayal begins. Urgency feels like everything has to happen right now or it's failing. Sustainable progress may feel slower, but it's steadier. You still move forward, you're just not relying on adrenaline to feel safe. Consistency without depletion means the business does not require you to empty yourself completely in order to keep it alive. If the only way something can stay consistent is by pushing harder every month, that is not sustainability, that is extraction. When I use the phrase symbiotic relationship, this is what I mean. The business gives back to you in proportion of what you give to it. Your time, energy, and creativity are not just taken. They are returned through income, stability, fulfillment, or freedom. If a business grows but you feel smaller inside of it, that relationship is out of balance. Yes, especially in the beginning, you might hustle more. That can be intentional. The difference is whether you're setting a precedence that you're expecting to live in long term. You should not build something that only works 120 hours a week and then hope it magically becomes sustainable later. Scaling faster can be a choice. Burnout is what happens when it's not. Before we go deeper, I want to zoom out for a moment. A sovereign side hustle is not held together by motivation or willpower. It's held together by how the business is designed. This kind of business lives inside a few core containers, structures that protect your energy, identity, and growth over time. Number one, identity. This is how you naturally show up, your voice, your energy, your values. Not everyone is meant to build or market themselves in the same way, and forcing a mismatched identity creates friction very early. Branding. Branding is not just aesthetics, it's clarity. It's how your work is positioned, what you offer, and how people understand what you do without you needing to over-explain or over-perform. Presence and visibility. How you show up publicly should feel sustainable, not performative. Your visibility rhythms need to match your nervous system, your capacity, and your real life, not an external standard of consistency. Legal containment. This is what gives your business edges. Clear boundaries around responsibility, ownership, and protection reduce uncertainty and allows you to operate with confidence instead of vigilance. Financial foundations. This is not about pressure or constant optimization. It's about stability, circulation, and clarity, so decisions are not made from panic or scarcity. Lastly, records, receipts, and operational integrity. These are the quiet systems that support trust, both internally and externally. When these are in place, you don't have to hold everything in your head, and the business doesn't have to rely on you remembering or managing everything manually. Sovereignty is not one decision you make once. It's a system that keeps you intact as you grow. And now we're going to walk through each what one of these look like in practice. Sovereign business identity. Before branding, visibility, or money, there's identity. I want to slow down for a moment because this is usually where things go sideways. Identity is the foundation of a business. Most people do not struggle because they're not working hard enough. They struggle because they're trying to build a side hustle on an identity they think they should have instead of the one that they actually have living inside them. For example, somebody may love working at night, dress casually, speaking directly, and having a sharp sense of humor. But they're trying to build a business that requires a polished daytime calls, constant emotional availability, and a tone that does not feel natural for them. Nothing is wrong with the business model itself, but it costs more energy than it should because it's built on a borrowed identity. Your offers, your ideal clients, and even your structure are not just strategy choices. They are identity choices. Who you serve, how you show up, how you package your work, and how much access people have to you. When these choices match who you actually are, capacity increases almost automatically. Decisions feel clearer. Momentum does not require adrenaline. But when the identity is borrowed, when you're performing somebody else's version of professionalism, success, or legitimacy, everything downstream gets a little bit heavier. You overthink offers, you second-guess clients, you need more motivation for the same amount of work. It can also show up later as costly rework. I think back to a long time ago for an art show that I entered where I submitted my booth setup. I had proudly displayed sculptures, books, jewelry, and photography. When somebody asked me what I was and what my business did, I actually couldn't answer. Was I an artist, a photographer, a sculptor? That lack of identity clarity showed up everywhere in how I positioned myself, how people understood my work, and how much effort it took to explain what I did. Before we talk about branding, visibility, or money, we want to make sure that the foundation is real because no amount of strategy can compensate for building an identity that does not belong to you. Sovereign business branding. Branding is not just about aesthetics, it's about translation. Once an identity is clear, branding becomes the way that identity is made legible to the outside world. This is where so many people get confused because they think branding is something that you can add later or something that you borrow once you feel legitimate enough. But branding is not a decoration, it's an expression. Two people can offer the same service and need completely different brands in order to stay regulated while doing it. One person may feel most themselves with clean visuals, soft tones, and structured language. Another may feel alive with bold colors, humor, sharp edges, and unconventional messaging. Neither one is more professional, but one will cost them far less energy. When branding is misaligned, you'll feel it immediately. You hesitate before posting, you rewrite endlessly, you avoid showing up because it feels like a performance instead of presence. This is not a confidence problem, this is an expression problem. Sovereign branding allows your nervous system to relax because you're no longer translating yourself into somebody else's language. Your visuals, words, tones, and boundaries become working with you instead against you. This is why branding is not separate from sustainability. If your brand requires you to override your instincts, soften your truth, or exaggerate yourself in order to be seen, it will eventually cost you energy you cannot afford to lose. When branding is aligned, visibility stops feeling exposing and starts to feel coherent. And that coherence is what makes presence possible without force. Sovereign business presence and visibility. Most people do not burn out from creating. They burn out from trying to be visible in ways that are not natural for them. There's a quiet belief that visibility has a correct form, that you have to be on video, you have to be on a certain platform, that you have to be everywhere and be taken seriously. This is simply not true. I know artists who make their entire living from selling only at art shows. No online store, no content calendar, no social media presence at all. This model has limitations, but it also has clarity, and clarity is often what keeps people regulated and consistent. Visibility is not about doing everything, it's about choosing a container that you can actually sustain. I also know somebody whose website was custom coded by a family member. They thought it was great because it would save them money. It looked very impressive, but every small change required outsourcing. Even a broken link meant paying somebody else. The website became a point of friction instead of support. It doesn't mean the custom coding is bad, it means it was misaligned on how she works. I personally enjoy website design. I understand enough to troubleshoot, so I use a hybrid approach, doing some things myself and outsourcing others intentionally. That works for me. It would be exhausting for somebody else. This is the core of sovereign visibility. You don't need to be visible everywhere. You need to be visible in ways that do not drain your energy faster than they build trust. Visibility is not a permanent identity. It's a living system that should evolve as your capacity evolves. The goal is not maximum exposure. The goal is sustainable presence. Sovereign business legal basics. Along with scaling visibility or revenue, there's protection. This is usually the slide where people tense up because legal sounds overwhelming, expensive, complicated, or something that you have to deal with later. But legal basics are not about fear, they're about relief. Most stress in business is not caused by clients or money. It comes from uncertainty, not knowing where responsibility starts or ends. Simple legal clarity creates nervous system safety. For example, knowing whether you're operating as yourself or a business entity, knowing what you're actually responsible for, knowing what is protected and what is not. I often see people delay legal basics because they think they need to have everything figured out first. But basic structure creates clarity. It doesn't require it. It's not about perfectionism. You don't need to have the most complex setup. You need the right size setup for where you are now. Legal foundations allow you to stop holding everything in your head, and they let you make your decisions without constantly scanning for risk. So growth does not feel dangerous. So expansion does not require hypervigilance. So your business can rest inside something solid as it evolves. I'm not a legal expert, but there are many accessible resources available, from small business workshops to free or low-cost consultations around trademarks, intellectual properties, and data protection. Legal basics are not about control, they're about containment, so your energy does not leak and worry. Sovereign business financial basics. This is not about doing everything yourself. It's about creating financial structure that hold business steady as it grows. Financial basics often carry a lot of emotional weight, like legal does. People think they should understand everything, track everything, or manage it all on their own. But like legal structure, financial structure is not about self-reliance. It's about support. A sovereign side hustle does not rely on willpower to stay organized around money. It relies on systems and, when appropriate, professionals that reduce risk and mental load. This might look like having support for payroll, taxes, bookkeeping, or reporting, especially if those are not your strengths. There's no virtue in forcing yourself to do work that consistently drains you, confuses you, or creates anxiety. Sovereignty is not about pushing through weaknesses, it's about designing around them. Some people love spreadsheets and numbers, others hate it with a passion. Both can run sustainable businesses. They simply just need different levels of support. When financial systems are aligned, money stops feeling like something you have to constantly monitor or brace for. Decisions become clearer, growth feels more predictable, and you don't have to carry everything in your head. This content exists to help money move in ways to support stability instead of stress, so financial responsibility doesn't quietly become another source of burnout. When money is supported by the right systems and people, it stops demanding constant attention and starts supporting the business instead. Lastly, sovereign business records and receipts. This is one of the most underestimated parts of business and also one of the most relieving when it's in place. Records and receipts are not about being a good admin. It's about not holding everything inside your head. When records are scattered or missing, your nervous system stays slightly activated. There's a constant sense of, I'll deal with that later, or I hope I don't need it. The background vigilance costs energy when you're not consciously thinking about it. Sovereign record keeping is not about tracking every detail obsessively. It's about creating a reliable place where information lives so your mind doesn't have to act as a walking storage unit. This also makes collaboration easier. Accountants, bookkeepers, and tax professionals can support you properly when information is accessible and consistent. And like everything else we've talked about, this is about working with your strengths. Some people enjoy organizing, categorizing, or even writing. Others do not. Both can build sustainable businesses, but the system has to match the person. Whether that means software, a simple reoccurring process, or outsourcing entirely, the goal is the same: clarity without overwhelm. This context exists so growth does not create chaos behind the scenes, so the business feels trustworthy, grounding, and easier to carry it over time. When your records are clear, your future self is protected. Choose your path. Reclamation does not happen through force, discipline, or motivation. It happens the moment you decide you're no longer willing to trade away. When I say I built my side hustle in a way that protects my capacity and doesn't consume it, it's not about doing less work. It's about refusing to build something that only functions when I override myself. It means my time, health, energy, and nervous system are not collateral damage for growth. They are design constraints, and that's what makes a business sustainable. When I say I'm part of my business system, not a resource to be extracted from it, I'm naming something that most side hustle advice ignores. Most systems are built to optimize output, not human capacity. They assume that you will adapt endlessly. This reclamation says, I am not something that the business runs on. I am something that the business is built around. My clarity, limits, skills, and season of life all matter on how this is designed. Lastly, when I say sustainable structure is my growth strategy, I'm choosing longevity over urgency. I'm choosing systems that hold me instead of outcomes that cost me. This is not about slowing down. It's about building in a way that does not require collapse to succeed. This is what changes when success is measured not by what you can survive, but what you can sustain. Reclamation is the decision. Support is how it becomes real. And from here, the next step is learning how to build the system differently and with tools, structures, and choices that actually support the life you're trying to create. And that's where the next path opens. Exploring True Path resources. This session is an orientation, a way to name patterns, build awareness, and create a point of reference you can return to. The deeper work happens through structured tools and practices designed to help you stay yourself under pressure in a way that respects your nervous system and your timing. If you feel ready to continue, there's many resources available at truepathco.com, including workbooks, courses, workshops, and guided practices. For those who know they already work best through direct conversation, there's also an option to explore working with me one-to-one. All these resources are optional, unpressured, and offered for those who feel the resonance, not obligation. Choose what feels aligned, explore at your own pace, and build a life you can truly thrive in. On Tuesdays, I share new content at 12:30 p.m. EST. I have a Spotify channel, a free resource tab on my website, and a YouTube channel. You choose the platform that works best for you. Each session's around 30 minutes and a gentle way to stay aligned, grounded, and supported, with a variety of topics from holiday seasons to relationships, career, or whatever else life throws at you. Next week, we'll be exploring energetic boundaries. January 20th will be from overwhelm to action, and January 27th will round out our month with self-trust as strategy. Your feedback helps shape these sessions. I invite you to share your insight so I can build each week around what will serve you most. You can scan the QR code or you can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for being here today and practicing awareness in real time. Until next time, let your inner compass guide you.